On this episode of the podcast, I have with me Phil Frio. He is the VP of Product and Engineering at Close. We're going to be talking about an interesting journey from being a founding engineer to the VP of Engineering. Not everyone gets that vantage point of seeing the growth. Phil has been at Close for almost 12 years, and he's seen a lot of different areas growth. And we're going to be talking about why he stayed. We're going to be talking about retention. We're going to be talking about what mattered in the early days and what he's focused on now. Phil, I'm excited to have you on to talk about this. Thanks.
Me too. Thanks for having me.
Sure thing. All right. Before we start, I just want to make sure everyone just kind of knows what Close does as a business, give some context to some of the discussion. I think it'd be a great jumping off point.
Yeah, definitely. So close.com, it's a SaaS product. It's a CRM for startups and SMBs. Basically, we're making software for salespeople to help make them more productive.
All right, there we go. So I guess you have been at the company for a while. It's 11 years and almost 12, 11 years, 9 months, it says on LinkedIn here. You started off as a founding engineer, and I've had a few people on that have seen longer durations, 5-6 years. I haven't been on that's been a part of the growth journey this long. I guess, we're going to dial back a little bit. We're going to try to go back to what you can remember from the early days and joining as a part of the founding team. If you were to put yourself back into that, early stage, you're a company of 6, it says, right? You hear this pitch at this company at the time it was closed.io. What made you go? Yeah, and you were at a good company before that. You were at another great startup, so it wasn't like you were, not lacking opportunity. But you heard this opportunity. There was something in it that must have made you go, "Hey, I think this is something I want to be a part of."
Yeah, definitely. So the real reason was just the founders and the team. Whenever I joined, we were actually not Close or Close.io. We were doing an entirely different idea. And I had known the founders for a while, and they wanted me to join right when they were starting the company originally under a different idea, and then but I was really happy where I was, and then they pivoted to a newer idea that still wasn't yet Close. But at that point, some time had gone by, and I just knew that the founders were gonna succeed at something, and I was attracted to the vision and kind of the new idea, and then really just wanted to work with them and do something with them, because I just could tell that they were going to succeed at something. So that was it. And then pretty soon after I joined, we ended up pivoting the company to the idea that we've been working on for the last decade or so of Close.
Interesting. I run a recruiting company, and the thing that I get most from candidates is, what does the company do? What's their mission? It seems, from the outside looking in, a lot of times people look and go, you know what, software engineering is software engineering, but really, it's the problem you're tackling. What problem are you tackling? Is it interesting? Is it going to make you get up every day and go, hey, I want to be here. I want to keep developing features. I think it's like any job. And I think sometimes people might not appreciate how important that is. I guess when you were looking at that, evaluating that early on, obviously you believe in the founders. You've seen them now switch through a couple ideas. Close kind of hit the spot. Can you recall what made what you were like, hey, I think this is the product I can get behind?
Yeah, so I mean, like I said, it was really the team that was kind of the main motivator. Whenever I joined, we were actually trying to do a sales as a service, like salespeople as a service kind of model, and we needed to make. We were going to have all of these salespeople, hundreds of salespeople on staff that tech founders would be able to hire and scale up and down, like AWS, if you wanted to, rent some salespeople for the month or whatever. But we needed software to make the sales team more efficient. That was kind of the very early idea when I joined. And we pretty quickly realized, as we had built some internal software for our sales team, that the secret sauce of kind of like why everyone was attracted to our company at the time, our our consulting clients and salespeople that wanted to come work with us was because of the internal software we had built. And so this is all within the first 6 months or so of me joining, but this is around the time we decided to start focusing on productizing kind of what the kind of secret internal product that we had, and really like focus on that as an external product. So we took a few months to build that up kind of from scratch as a productized version, and then launch that. So it wasn't so much like, the particular industry or something was exciting to me. And even now, whenever we're talking to new engineering candidates that we're trying to hire, it's not like we're looking for people that are like passionate about sales software necessarily. Like that's not like maybe like my lifelong mission specifically is sales software, but it's really for me, it's really about working on a high quality product that really helps people, makes a big impact in something, and doing it with a team and in a way that you really enjoy.
Awesome. And obviously, you've stayed for a long time. So obviously, that those are drivers that would it be safe to say that have been consistent? Because obviously, you've nearly you're closing in on 12 years.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, people ask me like why have I stayed for so long? I think the first answer is like the job keeps changing. It hasn't really been the same job for 12 years. My titles changed and things like that, but also just like what we're doing, what I'm doing along the way has changed. So, I kind of feel like there's been a few different main like phases. But overall the job has kept changing. And then the other thing is just the scale, the quantity and quality of what we're able to build and ship keeps getting better and more exciting. So it's just with a bigger, better team, you're able to just kind of do more interesting things. So that's been kind of interesting. And then, the third reason would just be the team, the company values, the people, that kind of thing. So
Interesting. And I guess when you talk to people, sometimes they view themselves as early stage startup people. Some people view themselves as I like to join a little bit. Things are baked. You've grown with the product from zero to now, a fairly sizable team as the VP of engineering. How have you seen your growth? Right, like the hats you have to constantly evolve from. Hey, I'm managing these handful of people to I'm managing 40, 50 people. Those are not necessarily the same exact skill sets. I mean, some people don't do great coping with the scope change. How have you been over time working to build that skill set? Because obviously, I mean, you've handled it pretty well.
yeah, definitely. And that's kind of what I mean by the job keeps changing. Like it continues to challenge me. I continue to need to learn. In the very early days, it was like learning some new tech framework and, like, literally building the software. Right. And then it was like, oh, we really need to hire some more engineers. Like I had done some hiring before, but not at any kind of like real scale. And so it was like, I need to really learn hiring. And then it was like, oh, now we have a team. I really need to like become a decent manager of this team. And, it just kept going. And so I think, for me, all of that stuff has been pretty interesting. Like I think some people like really just like the technical challenges only. And if that's like, for people like that, then I think my journey would not have been as interesting because I've just written less and less code over the years, for example. But for me, like just continuing to find ways to grow, to learn, to do new things, has been what the job has needed, and so that's kind of lent itself well for me.
And I guess you don't see that a lot. Like I guess you see at larger companies, you see maybe the decade long tenure, right? You don't see a lot of companies that are under, at the times, 50, 100, 200 people maintain people for this duration, which I think is interesting because I think we could talk about some of the tribal knowledge impact in a second. But when you're kind of looking at your journey and you're bringing people on, do you kind of see yourself as an anomaly? I mean, is there an expectation of, well, I've been here a decade, maybe somebody else will like it, I'll stay a decade? Or do you kind of realize the industry does have people who are there for only 2 years, 18 months, 3 years, they move on to the next challenge?
Yeah, we actually have really good retention numbers across the company. And so I'm not the only person that's been around for a decade plus. And then we didn't do a lot of hiring after that. So then we have a lot of people that have like hit our 5-year mark, for example. So yeah, I think like just our company we've tried to do as many things as we could on the team to encourage retention and to like value tenure and retention, things like that. So yeah, I think like people do see that. They notice it during the interview process when they talk to someone that's been here for 4 or 5 years, that interviews them and that still seems relatively happy. And I think it's a selling point because there's been a lot of engineers that they work in code bases where the people who wrote the code are like, no one's here anymore, but we still have to maintain this stuff, and or just like working with a team that generally expects to stick around for a while, I think has a lot of advantages. And it kind of just really affects the company culture and values. So one of our biggest values is build a house you want to live in. And the basic idea there is like, we're not like most of our team is not joining for a year or two and then leaving, or we're not trying to like build a company and flip it in 2 years, something like that. It's like, obviously people come and go and no one's like, expecting to be here forever, maybe, but let's build a house, let's build a company, a team, a code base, whatever it is that we want to actually be in for a while. And so I think that has had a big impact.
You mentioned the founders, and they were actually, big reason you joined. You've mentioned that a couple of times. Obviously, you were given an opportunity to level up consistently. Like, I mean, it's part of your journey. You mentioned you didn't know how to, hadn't done a lot of hiring, so you had to go figure it out. And I guess each founding team's going to have different preferences, right? Now, I guess we can talk about, your founding team. How instrumental is that view of allowing someone to level up? Because obviously you could always try to bring in an outside hire. You're like, hey, I just need somebody at this VP of engineering role who's managed 45, 50 people, which is a different skill set than managing 15 to 20. How instrumental have they been?
Yeah, they've definitely, the founders have definitely given, me a great opportunity to be able to show that I'm able to keep leveling up, so far at least. And I think, I try to do the same thing on my team. We've had several internal promotions for leadership roles and things like that. I think just like, trusting the team, helping people grow, encouraging growth, giving new challenges and opportunities is definitely part of it. And then, but on the other hand, there are other times where we are explicitly looking to bring in external like leadership hires, for example. And so we've like, that's something I've done a lot in the last couple of years, is try to bring in some external leadership so that we weren't only promoting within and just kind of like only having kind of the single viewpoint of how things are done and all that. So we've started to kind of really bring in some seasoned leaders from outside of the organization just to help help us just improve overall leadership team and some diversity of ideas and things like that. And that's been good too.
It's interesting. It's like I kind of keep going back to it's a specific culture that's been cultivated, and it's definitely top down, but also bottom up, because it sounds like you are promoting those same principles of giving people an opportunity, giving people that chance to level up, because that does affect retention, because people typically leave for very few different reasons. Money's one, opportunity is the other. They just don't like the environment, which is a different problem. But, having that opportunity and be giving that opportunity is what a lot of people do crave. And I guess from what I'm hearing, it sounds like that's now part of the culture. Hence, you're getting the 5-year, 10-year people too. Now there's other 10-year plus, but now you're getting 5-year plus.
Yeah, definitely. And, I think there's some like company, just like general things that we have as a company that can help. First of all, we're remote. So, when I started, we were in Silicon Valley, and that was great for a season of my life for several years. And then it was no longer great. So I was able to come back to Florida. My wife and I wanted to start a family here near our parents and that kind of thing. And so the fact that we were set up as a remote company, I think also lends itself well toward longer retention, because people people who are in one place only because of a job, like it's just harder to retain people forever, especially if it's Silicon Valley, and that's not necessarily where people want to like end up long term. And then we've done some other things like, within engineering, for example, we're trying very hard to be really clear that you don't have to like go into management or to continue progressing in your career. So we've got, a technical individual contributor track. The idea is like you shouldn't have to go into management to make more money, to be promoted, things like that. And then even just within any particular, like for like a senior engineer on the team, we try to give lots of like leadership opportunities, and both on kind of the purely technical side as well as the like project leadership side, things like that to let people again continue to grow.
I'm going to ask, I guess, a bit of an off-topic question, but you mentioned the remote components. I'm now curious. Obviously, in the last 18 months, we've been hearing a lot of noise about return to office, shift from work from home. We're seeing different viewpoints. We're seeing people wanting to leave just because of that. And here you guys are with this tenure setup where people are staying a long time. They like it, and you guys actually went to remote a while ago. Obviously, sounds like a while ago. You're in Florida now. How does that work for you guys? People are staying a long time. You guys are fully remote. Sounds like a great case of a blueprint for people to start trying to pay attention to how this can work. Obviously, we're talking a smaller company, right? We're not going to say, a 50,000 person, 10,000 person company could emulate this, but there's some things here that are working really well.
Yeah, for sure. I do think that being in person in the very early days, like when we were just starting out and everything was changing every week, was probably really good, and also gave kind of an initial core group of us like a strong amount of core trust for each other, so that as we started going partially remote and then fully remote, there was already some real like long-term trust built within the team. I think that helped, but for 7 years or so, I think we've been fully remote now, and we're at about 90 plus people as a company. And yeah, it works really well. I think we do a couple things that I think help. One is that we generally are hiring within US and European time zones. So that's a lot of the world. I think it's like about half of the world's time zones, roughly, which is, a large percentage of people, but it's not the whole world, right? We are not a 100%, async only culture that a few companies try to be as they scale. So part of being remote for us is that we still have at least like face-to-face synchronous time on Zoom, things like that. We also actually do meetups, company retreats. I think that's also really key. So we get together the entire company gets together, which can be complicated and expensive, flying people from all over the world into some spot that can kind of handle everybody. But that's like pretty key to just relationship building, and getting to know people better. And then like that kind of like once or twice a year setup, I think really helps carry us through the rest of the year. And then smaller teams will also do like meetups throughout the year sometimes too. So that definitely helps. But we do a combination of synchronous and asynchronous. So we are pretty. I mentioned we do rely on some overlap for being able to have synchronous calls and meetings and things like that. But much of our work is asynchronous. And so specifically looking for hiring people that have really good communication skills, especially written, which, not everybody has. And so the difference between like somebody being able to work through something on a call or, live is a little bit of a different skill than write up the problem, write up your ideas, put it into a document, and then kind of circulate that and get feedback. So we of course do a lot of asynchronous like code reviews in GitHub, and then we use Dropbox Paper for product and engineering specs. And so we do a lot of like, again, like asynchronous document review and writing up ideas, and then like Loom videos, things like that. So
interesting. You obviously, we've talked about tenure, we've talked about retention, we've talked about, even now you touched on remote and how that works. One thing that has crossed my mind is information sharing. We obviously can talk about tribal knowledge concerns, because obviously as people work with each other longer, information is readily available. You've built some of these systems, so somebody could ask you that question. Maybe there's a less of a drive to formalize documentation since people are sticking around, people have tenure, and I don't know if there is or isn't. I'm going to let you answer that. But how do you guys deal with that? Are things formalized? Are things documented? There's a comfort level of being able to just ask somebody who's built the systems because you guys do have good tenure. How do you guys deal with that?
I think when you're remote, you have to like over document, because while it's true you can ask somebody on Slack or on Zoom or whatever, it's still not quite the same as being in an office where I guess the burden of asking somebody something just feels lower, probably if you're the water cooler or whatever it is. So we definitely do, try to have a culture of documentation. I think it's very important in remote. And then, yeah, we have people that have been around for a long time, which helps, but we also have, we've been growing, the business has been growing, the team's been growing. And so as you have new people, it's just not scalable. Whenever you've answered a question, 3 or 4 times at some point, I think you realize you want to just like write it down to help. And we try to be cognizant of like the bus factor. There shouldn't be like one person that is like the only person that can really do or know something. So yeah, I think that definitely helps. We also have had we've also had like some interesting things. Like we've had a Slack, we use Slack for our team chat, but a lot of companies use Slack as like a permanent knowledge base. We have kind of done the opposite, where we have a pretty short retention window on our Slack messages, so they just go away after a certain, like we've experimented with different numbers as low as like 30 days. And so the idea being that, yeah, you're talking about something, but whatever it is, it's going to go away. So you better put it into a document or a wiki or a GitHub issue or whatever that is kind of designed to be long lasting, easily searchable, that sort of thing.
I like it. I think people get comfortable when they're around, so it becomes easy. But sounds like you guys are still trying to make sure the next person is going to have an easier time. I was going to pivot. There's one other area I really want to make sure we touched on, because I think it is interesting. And you mentioned, I guess, when we spoke earlier about when you're in an environment where it's VC backed versus you're actually in an environment where it's profitable growth, and there's a different component to that in terms of how it impacts you as an employee, and how potentially it affects your tenure. And maybe you would be here, maybe you'd not, I don't know. But maybe talk to us a little bit about that side of the house, and how that's kind of impacted or shaped kind of any of your tenure.
Yeah, so we are not really on the VC track. We have basically been bootstrapped and just customer funded for a very long time. And I think it's been good for us as a company overall. We've just been much more in control of our own destiny. So it's meant we haven't scaled up incredibly fast. Like it's taken us a decade or so to get to almost 100 people as a company, but it's just been, what the VC industry might call slow growth. For us, it's just been steady, continual growth in a healthy way that whenever challenges come up in the economy, in the market, in the funding environment or whatever, we're just a little bit more in control than I think a lot of companies that are always relying on their next round of funding. So that's been really good, when all the uncertainty during during COVID or actually now it's a pretty interesting time for us. Like there's been a lot of tech layoffs in the last year, and a lot of companies have basically stopped hiring or laid off a bunch of people. And so we've been able to take advantage of that because the business is still strong, still growing, not growing at hockey stick like VC style, but still doing well. So it's actually been a really good time for us to be able to take advantage of hiring. So we've been, I think, as a lot of other companies have been doing hiring freezes and layoffs, we've been able to double down and invest in engineering and product, and really rolls across the board, which has been nice. Like as I've been talking with candidates lately, it's been, there's been a lot of like maybe that person hadn't been laid off directly, but the layoffs in their companies kind of shook their confidence in the company, or just like the trajectory that they thought the company was on, all of a sudden it's no longer on. And so it's been good for us to be able to kind of hire in this market, for example.
Well, I mean, I didn't know, but it was from the founder's perspective. Was that by design, or was that accidental, or how did they approach it? If you know, or maybe you don't know.
Yeah, I think they had, I think they really like the be in control of their own destiny type of mentality. I think, they and we have had friends that have raised tons and tons of money and had on paper really, really, really big, valuable businesses that all of a sudden went to like basically nothing. And it's just, we just kind of have always tried to do things a little bit differently. I think it's just like personality of the founders in the early team. Where and that I think was just one of those things. So I'm sure there was probably a period where we could have raised really easily. I mean, now as well, and grown much faster. But that never comes like for free, and always has a bunch of risks and like impact on how things are.
Do you ever look back and see how much has been built, and kind of kind of just remember the initial days versus now? Does that pop up, or are you just too busy and just focused on the future?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like there's some really great things about being in a really tiny team, being in a really early stage startup. Like just you get to move really fast. Like I feel like you'll never, like when building a new product, you'll never move as quickly as before you have like real users, real data, like where uptime matters. Like it's fun to just build and move super fast, and where you're just kind of like what matters is like doing everything, being the jack of all trades, that sort of thing. So yeah, definitely have some like fond memories of the early days, but it's what we're doing now is better, and it's there's kind of no point of focusing on how things used to be when the goal was always to change, to grow. So it's fun memories, but it's okay that it's in the past.
Yeah, it's interesting. I recently saw something where it said progress is really what people crave, and it translates to happiness. And this might be a little bit of just your pure opinion on how this would apply, but there's a lot of people, companies that leave for a better opportunity. Obviously, in your case, you've stayed. It's been a great dynamic. You've been given the opportunities. You've risen to the challenge as well. So it's not like just, hey, Phil, go tackle this, and but you've succeeded. So obviously, it's worked out well. If you could talk to, let's say, an employee, it could be a IC manager, it could be anybody. They're at a company and they're actually going to leave because they don't feel the opportunities there, right? What can they do to potentially be satisfied with that ability to keep the progress moving forward in their career and staying where they're at? Because obviously, it's not as easy as just, hey, I'm going to be given the opportunity. Sometimes you have to go get it, or you have to know how to ask for it. Any advice there?
I think that people just across all levels of companies, and I think I'm guilty of this too, oftentimes, but just like underestimate the impact and importance of just like your own initiative. Like I think people wait a lot of times for for someone to say, this is exactly what you should do, go do it really well. In those cases, when you're asked, then yeah, go do it really well. But the person above you may not necessarily have all the answers ready to tell you. And then especially the more senior you get, the less you'll ever get direct answers from your manager or whatever. You're basically expected to come up with the good ideas. So I mean, when we're hiring engineers, like we're really just even at the individual contributor level, we're really just hoping for people to come up on their own initiative with ideas that they think would help move us forward, that would help us write and ship code faster, that would, product ideas, ways that we could do something entirely differently, challenge the status quo, that kind of thing. I think like people just taking initiative, inertia is really powerful. Just like one person championing an idea or a better way to do something can like really make a difference. So that's probably my first piece of advice.
Awesome. I like it. I mean, it's a great story. I think we'll have to do a follow up. I don't know how far down the road, see if you're still there, and kind of get part two of the story. More learnings and more advice. But Phil, thanks for being on. If somebody wants to reach out to you, pick your brain, what's a good way of getting hold of you?
Yeah, I am on Twitter, also known as X, at Phil Frio, PhilFreo, or my email, phil@philfrio.com.
All right. We'll include some of those in the show notes. And again, thank you for being on the show. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. That's it for the episode. Be back again, different guest, different topic. Until then, a couple of things. One, if you like the episode, if you found it interesting, which I hope you did, because I think it's a great story that Phil just shared, share it with somebody else. It's a fantastic points that Phil made, and I think everyone can benefit from these learnings. And also, like, subscribe, comment. Actually, let me know if you want me to talk about a topic that I haven't covered in the past. I'm always looking for new topics. Reach out to me. Let me know. Till next time. Thank you and goodbye.